Hello, everyone. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Redefining Diabetes Summit. We have here with us my good friend, Lucia Tiffany. Lucia, how are you?
Doing great. And thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, awesome. So before we start, let me just read a little bio about Miss Lucia Tiffany. So Lucia is a certified health coach and is a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. She has been involved in lifestyle education for over 50 years. She has given plant-based vegetarian cooking schools and health seminars across the nation, as well as internationally in Bermuda, Mexico, South America, and Africa. Her best-selling cookbook, Flavors of Health, is now accompanied by her cookbook, Beyond the Mask. Her passion is seeing people's health transformed through better choices, and she has been certified as a CHIP director, and her health and plant-based cooking school have been featured on 3ABN Global Christian TV network in English, Spanish, and French. Wow, this is an amazing bio. I love it. I love it. I love it. So,
I
welcome,
just
Lucia.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Lucia. Yeah. Welcome. So, Lucia brings a really refreshing perspective when it comes to overcoming type 2 diabetes. But before we dive into the conversation and all that good stuff, Lucia, I want you to tell our audience who you are. I know we really just gave a good bio about you, who you are, your journey, and what brought you to doing what you're doing now.
I love that question. Thank you so much, Dr. Nana. So, how many of you have heard of the Blue Zones? Dan Buettner wrote a book, was featured in National Geographic some years ago, where he was studying cultures that had high percentages of people that were living to be 100 years old or more. Anybody remember that? Well, I was born in the only blue zone in the United States, which is Loma Linda, California. It's in Southern California, and that's actually where my story starts. Both of my parents were in the field of health. My dad was a physician, my mother was a nurse, and they trained there at Loma Linda, and I was born there. So they had become very interested in lifestyle and its impact on health. And so they started me out really early in life being very conscious about health. And they were very involved in community health education. So before I was 10 years old, I was doing public presentations, helping my mother in her cooking schools, showing people that healthy eating was so simple that even a kid could get involved. So that's kind of what started my journey. But then as I grew older, became a teenager, I realized that my mother's side of the family had very strong genetics for type 2 diabetes. I had two grandparents on my mother's side, they were both diabetic. And my mother had seven siblings, and of those eight children, four of them are diabetic. I have a sibling that's diabetic. I have multiple cousins that are diabetic. So you can see that it definitely runs in my family.
Mhm.
But I also got to observe something else interesting. My grandmother, when she got her diagnosis and they put her on oral medications, she asked her doctor, "Is there anything I can do to get rid of this?" And it was long before people were talking about lifestyle and diabetes reversal. But he looked at her and he was like, "Well, you're probably 30, 40 pounds overweight. If you lost the extra weight, it might help." And that was about all he told her. So she went home and she put herself on a calorie restricted diet, started weighing herself every day. Not that I necessarily recommend that, but that's what she did. And she steadily lost weight right down to 120 pounds, which was her ideal weight. And she stayed there for the rest of her life. Not only that, but by the time she had lost the extra weight, her diabetes was completely gone. She didn't need any more medications, and she didn't need medications until her death at the age of 96. So I saw the impact that lifestyle could have on diabetes in a very powerful way through the story of my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was my uncle. My uncle is one of my favorite uncles. He was a minister. He was a very talented pianist. And some of my favorite memories growing up was family reunions where he would bring a box of music and he would have music to play piano duets, trios, quartets, two pianos with four people at each piano. I mean, we're talking like 16 hands all playing at the same time. And we would have so much fun. And he also got diagnosed with diabetes as he approached midlife, but he was always like very social. He was always being invited to people's houses to eat. And he didn't make the same choices my grandmother did around being careful with what he ate. And so, after some years, he actually lost his sight entirely. And that was really tragic because then he couldn't read the music that he loved to perform. And, he still kind of kept on with very much of the same lifestyle, ended up losing a leg, then he ended up losing his other leg, and then he ended up losing his life. And so in my own family, I've seen the power of choice and how that can actually make a huge difference in how your life ends up turning out. And so I think that having observed that and also having worked with people in reversing chronic lifestyle disease for most of my life and seeing over and over and over again how disease can be reversed through simple lifestyle changes, it's like I'm completely sold on it. It's like I want everyone to know that you have the power to determine the outcome of your life. And nobody else can do it for you. You get to do it for yourself. And that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, awesome. That is such a great story. I really love, and you've actually painted a really good picture into like our conversation. So I love the story about your grandmom and your uncle as well. That is so amazing. I can relate. Even my own uncle also had like now has blindness. He's blind, right, from complications of diabetes. So it's definitely near and dear to my heart as well. So just so we can dive into the conversation, because I'm already loving it, and I know your insights are gonna be really good for the audience. So you've already created a great picture. So let me ask you. So oftentimes, many of us, and I'll just say us, right, experience moments of determination. We wake up, trying to make healthy choices and manage our type 2 diabetes, right? But oftentimes, despite that best effort, we find ourselves succumbing to old habits by the end of the day, right? Or perhaps even get the results we are looking for, but we can't sustain it. So it looks like there's a gap between what we know and what we can do, right? So the know and the do gap, there's that gap there.
Yeah.
So Lucia, could you shed some light on why that actually happens, why that is like an uphill battle, and perhaps could you share maybe the science behind that? I would say maybe willpower or something and habit formation. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Sure. I think that's really important. And I want to share a few slides at this point to help make what we're talking about clear. So let me do
Sure.
that. Tell me if you can see my slide.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So here, I want us to start by understanding that how we think matters, because we're really going to kind of dive into that. I often have people telling me, I know I shouldn't blank, blank, blank. You can fill in your blank.
Yeah.
But I just don't have the willpower to resist the temptation, right? So it's like, I know I shouldn't eat that bag of M&Ms, but when I'm hungry or I feel lonely or, all kinds of negative emotions can be really common triggers for eating junk food. It's like I can have that decision to make between the donut and the apple. And guess what? I know the apple is better for me, but I'm picking the donut. I just don't have enough willpower. So I want to start by, let's talk a little bit about willpower, because willpower is important, but it's got some limitations. And I want us to understand that. In fact, one of my favorite authors once said this: the power of the will is not valued as it should be. If the will is kept awake and directed as it should be, it will impart energy to the whole being, and it will be a wonderful tool in the maintenance of health. So we must take a look at willpower and how can it help us to be that tool in maintaining our health. Well, the next question is, how do we experience health? Okay, health is our experience and is the sum total of the choices we make to support our health. Those choices might be about getting enough sleep, about getting regular exercise, about what we put on our plate. All of these choices in different areas of health add up together to create the health that we experience. And if our choices change, our health can also change. So we know that making changes in our behaviors is going to involve some willpower. There's no doubt about it. Without willpower, we have a hard time kicking off any kind of change. So, what is some of the science behind understanding willpower that can help us maximize the way we use it? Some of what I'm going to be sharing with you comes from the two most prominent researchers in the field of willpower, and that's Dr. Baumeister and Dr. Tierney. They were actually colleagues that have spent years looking specifically at the science of habit formation and willpower, but they've really focused on the willpower piece. So, one of the things that they found in their research was that willpower levels are the number one predictor of happiness, wealth, health, and general well-being. So obviously, we want to strengthen our willpower, have the most willpower possible, because look at what it has an impact on, all these things that are so important to us and that really create the quality of life that we experience. So as we look at success, we find that IQ, like your level of intelligence, is pretty much fixed over your lifetime. There's not a lot that we can do to actually change our IQ levels. But willpower, on the other hand, is very subject to change. And in fact, willpower measurements were twice as good at predicting academic success than was IQ. So I think that's really interesting. So willpower, we have some control over. IQ, we don't. But willpower is the most powerful predictor of success. So how do we look at measuring willpower? One thing that I found very interesting was understanding something that a lot of us have sensed but maybe hadn't articulated. And that is that we have a finite quality of willpower every single day. And it depletes as we use it during the day. So we have more when we get up in the morning than we do at the end of the day. Yeah. This change in willpower levels is something we call ego depletion. How many of you think this sounds a little familiar? You're starting to make some connecting the dots in your head between the time of day when you have, when it's easier for you to make good or different choices versus other times in the day. And ego depletion has a very important and powerful impact on our choices. So willpower gets used up during the day as we make choices. It doesn't matter if it's big choices or little choices. It includes things like, which blouse should I wear today? Which pair of shoes am I going to put on? What am I putting on my plate for breakfast? Should I fix my hair this way or that way? All of these are choices. And every time you make a choice, a little bit of your willpower gets used up. That is actually why some very high-performing executives, think Steve Jobs, have a very simple wardrobe. And a lot of people don't realize this, but you know, every time you saw Steve Jobs, right? He had a black t-shirt, black pants. That was what he always wore. He actually had a closet full of 28 black shirts, 28 black pants. He never had to think about what he was going to put on in the morning. And he did that on purpose to save his brain power for other things that he considered more important. So conserving willpower is actually a strategy that can serve us well when we're trying to create new habits. And we're going to talk about ways to do that. But I'd like to stop and ask, first of all, like, what is landing for you? Like, what is kind of sticking out to you about what we've said so far? Now, I want to hear that from Dr. Nana, but as you're listening to us as well, drop something in the chat and let us know, what about what we've talked about so far is landing for you? So, Dr. Nana, what do you think?
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that, the science behind the willpower, because obviously there's an area in our brain that has that it signals even failure alarm system, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes whenever we fail to do something, right, it signals that thing and it shut down the motivation in our brain. So this is really,
Mm,
really important. And I love how you said that willpower is good in the morning and it kind of like trickles down in the evening. I really do see myself in this, even with the task, our day-to-day tasks that we have to
mm,
do. Like sometimes you wake up. So what I do, and I know you'll get into all this later, so I'm not even gonna, share the strategies that I do. But usually in the morning, I have to do the most important things in the morning
mm.
because as the nights go by, I'm just like, forget this. I'm tired. So I love how you mentioned the science, the neuroscience behind willpower and habits information. It's really, really, and it's quite
Mm.
interesting the little analogies that you give, and it's all coming together. And I know the audience will definitely pick it up.
Awesome. So let's dive in just a little bit deeper
Mm-hmm.
because when we're talking about diabetes, we also are talking about blood sugars, right? And it turns out that our brain consumes a great deal of energy in the form of glucose just for daily functioning. Like our brain is about 2% of our body weight, just on average, but it uses about 20% of our body's total glucose. So it's very, very dependent on an even supply of glucose for functioning. And that level of glucose that we experience affects our willpower. So, for example, if we eat a good breakfast, it helps us to maintain good levels of glucose in our bloodstream so the brain can do its work. But it also means it's probably not a good idea to get into fight right before a meal when you're hungry because your brain doesn't have quite the same supply of energy and may not make the best choices when you're hungry. But on
Mm-hmm.
the other hand, even though sugar obviously gives you a bit of a spike, that's not what we want for good brain function. We want a slow burn, not a quick spike. So that means eating more whole foods, making sure we're getting lots of fiber in our meals to slow down the rate at which sugar moves into our bloodstream. And in fact, when we're sick, we need to realize that our immune system starts taking priority for using our energy because it needs it to help us heal, fight disease. And so when we're sick is also not a good time to depend on willpower or our brain's ability to make choices because the energy is going in a different direction. So if we can maintain good, healthy blood sugars, it also helps our brain to make good choices to help maintain good, healthy blood sugars. So we can get into a really good spiral, or by neglecting one of these things, we can get into a bad spiral. Do you see that? So
Mm-hmm.
all the things we do that affect our blood sugar are going to be important in terms of our willpower. If we're tired, instead of trying to push through, we need to sleep. As we sleep, it helps to replenish our willpower levels. So, all of those are important. And then the really obvious question comes, can willpower be strengthened? Because obviously, you can see that stronger willpower could be helpful. And there are some things we can do to strengthen our willpower. For example, practicing willpower. If we practice willpower in one area of our life, we will find we actually have more willpower in other areas as well. There's like a spillover effect as we practice. So, for example, pick one thing that'll help you with your blood sugars. Maybe that one thing is getting up and moving around, moving your arms and your legs for 5 to 30 minutes after a meal. That's going to be huge to lower your blood sugar so you don't have a big after meal spike. And by just consistently doing that one thing, maybe you start with 5 minutes of walking right after a meal. Doing that, you're going to find that other kinds of changes are going to become a little easier because you're practicing willpower in this area as you kick off this new way of doing things. Another way to optimize the effectiveness of willpower is to pre commit to something. Now, I'm a Christian, and one of the stories that comes to my mind is the story of Daniel and his three friends. And many of you have heard about Daniel, the one that was thrown into the lion's den.
Yes.
Well, before he was thrown into the lion's den, he and his three friends were new captives in Babylon. And the king wanted to feed them the best food because they were kind of cream of the crop Jews, and they were going to give them the best education and make them the rulers of many of the provinces in Babylon. That's the way the Babylonian government ruled. And when Daniel and his three friends saw the food that was being offered them, they realized it was not good for their health. It was rich food. It had a lot of meat. It had alcohol. There were things that, as Jews, they were not in the habit of consuming. And they decided that it was more important to them to take care of their body temple than to make the king happy. And they knew that refusing to eat this food might cost them their lives. But they engaged in pre-commitment. They made up their minds that they weren't going to eat that food. They went and talked to the manager of the slaves, and they explained their position, and they said, I don't know what you're going to do about this, but we are not going to eat the king's food. Just give us simple food. In fact, just give us a trial period of 10 days. And then you can make up your mind after 10 days which one of these plans is better for us.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that eating simple, healthy, whole foods for 10 days would show up as a huge difference between them and the other slaves that were going along with eating all the rich food from the king's table. Mm-hmm. These guys were teenagers. You can just imagine the other guys are going to be like full of pimples and skin blemishes and all of that after 10 days of rich food. They, on the other hand, as it turned out, they looked healthy. They had pink cheeks. They were doing well in all of their exams. And that pre-commitment took them through that decision-making process. So pre-commitment is really powerful in terms of making good use of our willpower. So as we exercise willpower, it will grow. As children learn to exercise willpower young, it's really, really good for them. It's because it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it grows. So I'd love it if you just drop some takeaways in the chat, because at the end of our interview, Dr. Nan will have a chance to bring those up and review those with you. So if you think that you're in a position where you are because you don't have enough willpower, the real key is building habits. You know why? Habits mean you've turned a behavior into something automatic and you don't need willpower for it anymore. Mm-hmm. So habits are your secret to conserving willpower, which is limited, right? Mm-hmm. So habits are economy secrets. Mm-hmm. The beauty of habits is that they economize your willpower. They support your character development, who you become. They support your health. They're really important because they're automatic responses that solve problems in life. They're shortcuts to conserving willpower. You build habits through frequent repetition, and you actually end up building neural pathways in your brain, and they grow stronger with use, weaker with neglect. Remember that key, because if you want a habit to get stronger, you just keep repeating it. If you want a habit to get weaker, ignore it. Stop using it. So these habits have the power to make or break us. There's a two-edged sword to habit formation. Mm-hmm. But I want to just kind of wrap it up with looking at how we set our goals around new health habits.
I was just about to ask you that as well. Sorry. I love how you're giving like practical tips to actually help us to start cultivating this, sustainable habits that you're, introducing to us. So I love how you're about to tie it into the goal setting, because that was my next question for you. So I'll continue.
Great. We're on the same page. I love it. So as we look at new habits, we always set goals. I'm going to give you like a sample. And these goals get set at one of these three levels that we're looking at here. The most common goals that people set are at the outcome level. And I want you to think about this kind of like an onion with three layers. And the outside layer is outcomes. Outcome is the result you want to see. And so that goal is results oriented. So maybe you say, I want to lose 25 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
That's my specific outcome. But I can go a little deeper and set a goal at the process level. Maybe I know that if I practice intermittent fasting consistently, I will lose weight. And as long as I keep practicing intermittent fasting, I'm going to get my result. Kind of like a pianist that wants to be a concert pianist. If they practice regularly, they can become a concert pianist. They can become proficient at the piano. The process of continuous practice or intermittent fasting or after meal exercise, whatever that practice is, you know that if you continue that, you will get the result you want. Maybe your result is normalized blood sugars. Maybe your result is less depression and anxiety. Whatever it is, if you go and look at your processes, that means that's the thing you can focus on that you know if you repeat consistently, you will get your result. And so these are the two levels that most people are setting goals around. But I want you to think about the identity level. The identity level is based on what your beliefs are about yourself, your beliefs, your values, how you see yourself. And what often happens is we'll think about outcomes and processes and fail to adjust our identity to match. So it's one of the reasons why so many of the people on the Biggest Loser TV program lose maybe 100, 150 pounds, but 9 months later are back to their original weight or higher. The problem wasn't they didn't know how to lose weight, because they did that. They did the process. They got the outcome, but their identity wasn't often addressed. And maybe they saw themselves as a fat person. If you see yourself as a fat person and you lose all this weight, then there's like a misalignment between your results and who you see yourself as. And if there's a misalignment, your brain is going to do everything it can to get those two aligned again. And so it's like, oh no, you got to put on some weight because you're fat. You're a fat person. You need to put some weight on. And it will subconsciously affect your ability to do that. So I want you to realize that identity is not set in concrete. You can choose a new identity. And if you choose a new identity that matches with your health goals, you will really cut down the risk of self-sabotage. So that's a real key. And I want you to think about that, explore that. I know we're kind of running out of time to talk about that today, but it's important for you to really consider that aspect to be successful in habit change. And that's kind of what I wanted to leave you with here today.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. So, what I hear you say, that's very important to shift your mindset into that level of identity before you can actually even see the results that you're looking for. Am I correct?
At least, yes, you might get your results, but if you want to keep them, like sustain them long term, your identity has got to be addressed as well. And we can create whatever identity we want for ourselves.
Exactly.
That is the power of free choice.
Exactly. This was such an awesome conversation. One last thing before I let you go. So in the world where, everybody is fixated on the instant gratification, right? We have seen so many people gravitate towards these miracle drugs that are, in the society. So in that context, for someone who is struggling, right? They love the instant gratification, but they also know that they need to have this behavior change. What advice will you give them?
I think many times one of the most important pieces is finding support for moving forward towards your goals. That might be in the form of a health buddy. It might be a family member that is willing to do things with you, practice these new habits. It might be engaging a coach like Dr. Nana or myself to work with you and provide accountability and support, as well as guidance on a step-by-step process to move forward, because small steps can lead you on a journey with powerful impact.
Awesome. That's a great advice. So thank you so much, Lucia. Guys, I know this is a recorded session, but send your questions in and I'll definitely will give it to Lucia as well. And Lucia has a great gift for us. It's a free guide that she has for us. So can you tell us a little bit about it and share with the audience how they can contact you as well? Because she also does coaching and she's been helping amazing people, reverse their type 2 diabetes, get off medication medication, lose that weight, and enjoy, take back that freedom. So I love for you guys to connect with her. So Lucia, share with us a little bit about your gift and how people can contact you as well.
Thank you. I'm assuming that gift link will be here on the page somewhere where you're watching this video.
Yes.
And it says mini assessment. And if you go to that page, it will ask you a simple question, and that is whether you are currently pre-diabetic or diabetic, or are you just at risk for it? Because some of you watching may know that you're at risk because lots of your family have it, or there's other risk factors, or some of you have a diagnosis. So you'll pick one of those options, and then you will get access to a free mini tool. It's a download that uses objective numbers, biometrics, that means measurements about your body, and simple lab work, like the things most of them your doctor does every year at your physical. But as you fill in that form, it will allow you to give yourself a score and will help you identify the areas in your health that are at highest risk for disease. So it'll help you to know what is maybe some of the first habits you want to be working on. Like, is your biggest problem your weight, your blood sugars, your cholesterol levels, or something else?
Oh, so that's such a good guide. I love it. I love it. So guys, it will be in the chat. So make sure you get this guide. This will definitely be of benefit to you and even your family. So share it to your friends and
Mhm.
families as well. Lucia, thank you so much for this conversation. It was just really insightful, and I know that the audience are loving it and will love it for those of you that will also watch it on replay as well. So thank you for your time and thank you for being a guest speaker for this summit as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nana. It's been an honor to be here. And if people want to reach out to me, they can easily do that at luciatiffany.com. That's my
Awesome.
website, and my email is lucia@luciatiffany.com. So look forward to staying connected to you all, and best of health. Because remember, health is wealth, and it comes by choice, not by chance.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Lucia.